Hi, everyone. See a few people dropping in. My name is Janne Elvelid. I am the head of public policy at Meta in Sweden. I work in Sweden and Finland. I feel a little bit lonely in here because I can't see you guys, but I think there are a few listening into it and watching this. So I am going to do a short presentation on a couple of development trends that are highly important to us in technology. I'm going to talk about, end on primarily talking about AI, but I'm going to get there through a little bit about what we call the metaverse or XR and immersive technologies to start with. I think there's the possibility, unfortunately not for you to dive in and have a conversation with audio and video with me, but there is a text-based chat that you can use to send your questions through. Please do that. I see if I can pick them up throughout, but primarily I think we're aiming to keep them for the end. So you also have a chance at the end to ask additional questions, and feel free to ask about anything in relation to Meta. I think some of you are more technical than I am. I don't have an engineering background. I'm working in policy, and I've been with Meta now for getting up on 8 years. I came here, and before that, I was working for the European Commission in Brussels on tech policy. So I'm a policy person, which means I work a lot on shaping the regulatory environment for technology in primarily Sweden and Finland then, but a lot of that work is also tied to what's happening in Brussels and in the EU, of course, because that applies in Sweden. And a lot of the tech issues are regulated out of Brussels rather than national, even though it's a mix of both, of course. I went into policy. I haven't been doing that in my whole career. I went into policy because I wanted to help politicians better understand what technology is doing to our society and how it's shaping our society. And primarily at the time when I started, I felt that politicians really wasn't focused enough on harnessing the possibilities of technology to develop our society. And I came into that after running for about 10 years. I was running research projects, ran a research institute called the World Internet Institute, and tried to understand the development of internet, primarily in Sweden. We did a study called Swedes and the Internet, or Svenskarna och Internet, which was an annual study, went back year after year to people, asking them what's happening in their life due to technology coming into their life. So I'm gonna have to put do not disturb on that phone. So it was the study is, by the way, it's now, for those of you who are Swedish, the study is still being done every year and presented by the Internet Foundation, who's done a great job of taking that over and still present it. So that's a little bit about me, who I am, and again, not if you have technical questions at the end, I may not be able to answer them here and now, but I'm happy to take some of them with me back and try to get back to you at a later stage if there would be questions. And that goes, of course, for all questions. Meta, most of you know who we are. Used to be called Facebook. Changed the name a few years ago for a few different reasons. One was to signal a focus on the metaverse, or our priority of immersive technologies and what we think is going to be the future for that. Another was that people sometimes when we were called Facebook, and obviously one of our biggest services was also called Facebook. So it was a little bit of mix-up because we also have services that have grown to become as big as Facebook, and that's primarily Instagram and WhatsApp are two other platforms we own and operate. So there's a little bit of that decoupling the business name from the product name as well, and it was not as some would argue that we tried to escape some of the problems we had as Facebook. That was not really the reason for this. While thinking about what XR or immersive tech and AI is doing for us, a lot of it comes back to the mission statement we have for the company to bring people closer together, and that's, we'll touch up on that a couple of times throughout, but that's really important to think about for us. I'd like to start with this is a slide that I have. This is the first slide I have when I started Meta in 2017. So it's a soon getting up on 8 years old slide, and it was a couple of years old back then. But this is how we saw the future back then, 2017, or even earlier than so. At the time, we were really much focused for the upcoming, for the closest future back then to serve our existing community. And at the time, we had bought Instagram, but Facebook was still the biggest one. We had WhatsApp at the time as well. But we really was focused on serving the existing community. Now, for the little bit longer medium horizon, the focus would be, which we have already passed today, to build out our next generation of services, and we increasingly see them as a whole network of services. But what I wanted to come to, which is relevant for today's presentation, is what we looked at on the 10-year horizon back then. When we really thought longer about the important trends and developments that would shape our society and our business, there were three major trends we had. I'm not sure if you can see the small logos, but the black circle on the white line is a logo for Quest, Oculus at the time. And what I want to say with that is that XR and immersive tech has really been on our agenda for a long time before we made the change of the company name and before we started talking about metaverse. It really wasn't something that came there. However, we did a substantial shift in our priorities of investments towards it a few years back, but it has been there for a very long time for us. The little blue one is Meta AI, is a fundamental part of our business already today, while generative AI obviously is what really is changing things today. More traditional AI has been a very important thing of all our services for a very long time. The last one was connectivity back then. We had a lot of projects where we tried to find ways of connecting the parts of the world that wasn't connected online. So to get an internet connection for people, we had drones, and we had a bunch of different experiments going on, and I think we even also had satellite connectivity on some of you may know that. Starlink, Elon Musk's company, is successful on that now. I also think that we actually was about to launch satellites with the help of SpaceX, and one of those rockets blew up. And around that time, I think we winded down a little bit all those types of efforts on connectivity, while connectivity to us is still something we work a lot with in partnership with telcos, and we do a lot of subsea cable investments. So it is still an important part, but may not in the shape that we had it back then. So that one has changed, while AI and XR obviously has just grown in importance and really shows that now on this 10-year line, we feel that we really are there where these technologies are shaping the future of our services. As mentioned, I want to go briefly in a little bit to why we think that XR and metaverse and immersive tech is really um, an important thing for us in our products. We define them, but first of all, I mean, there was lots of confusion around what we meant when we talked about metaverse. It wasn't a virtual world. It's not a single app or platform. It is more the shift in interfaces and how current digital services and new future digital services will come to life in a new 3D environment. And we believe that our current primary gateways into digital services like computers, laptops, phones, and two-dimensional screen will be complemented by different kinds of devices that are able to show three-dimensional content in a different way. It is I read somewhere someone defining the metaverse at the point in time where we no more do the distinction between the online and the offline, because the interfaces will really make the digital content and environments to blend with our physical environments. Now, I'm sorry, see if I can get.
I mean, this is just really incredible. I don't know how to describe it with words. It really feels like we're in the same room.
Yeah.
It feels like the future. This is truly, truly incredible. I just wanted to take it in. I'm still getting used to it. It's like, it's you. It's really you. But you're not here with me, right? You're there wearing a headset, and I'm wearing a headset. It's really, really incredible.
Now, some of you may have seen that, and what I want to emphasize here is really that this feeling of presence that we get some of, and definitely under COVID saw, and we're doing it right now through VC or webinars online on a two-dimensional screen. It's going to become something completely different with XR technologies when we're able to really start feel like we do share the same space with someone, even though we're far apart. And this video is obviously that's Lex Friedman interviewing Mark Zuckerberg on for his podcast, and they're just using our Quest Pro headsets and are able, with the photorealistic avatars, able to get the sense of presence. So that was not the video of Lex you saw. That was his avatar representing him in a virtual environment. That was I mean that's VR, obviously used for that use case we just looked at. When we talk about immersive tech today, a lot of that focus has been VR has been around. Virtual reality and headsets for that's been around for a while, and we've seen that, and there are applications for it. So that being one of the aspects, obviously, one important technology trend that's going to keep on driving metaverse forward. The other one, AR, is what I personally really find more interesting. When I used to do, I mentioned this study I used to do, this annual study where we asked people on how their lives are changing due to the use of internet. We asked them shitloads of questions on what do you do and how's that impacting your personal life, how's that impacting your other habits, and a whole range of different questions. And what we saw throughout that study, which it didn't start with the proper beginning of internet. I think we did the first one 2001. So we really unfortunately didn't really catch the first user. However, we saw throughout that study, we saw a few tech changes or tech trends that was shifted fundamentally, because back then we had not everyone, some had gotten broadband, it's starting to come, but we really saw that shift in the beginning of the 2000s when people got broadband in their home, and how that technology really changed. For when at the time people had dial-ups, or at least for the end of the 90s, and what happened with broadband was that suddenly you would start leaving your computer turned on, and you'd go and use internet for a whole vast of other activities and more things. And computer in most cases was stationary computer, still maybe in a home office or a bedroom or something. So it was still not super accessible and integrated to our life, but we did see a big shift when broadband came. Now, fast forward a little bit, what also happened later is that laptops started to take over from the stationary computers a little bit more, and we saw Wi-Fi's in their home, which meant that this internet device was still primarily computers, not mobile, started to integrate into your life. You had it in your kitchen, you had it in the living room, and suddenly another big leap due to a tech shift in the use of digital services, or time we focus most on internet related stuff. Now, fast forward another few years, the other massive shift that did a whole lot more was obviously when we got internet in our pockets through our smartphones, and that really integrated it to be with us more or less 24/7. We keep our phones next to our bed when we sleep, and that's another of these tech shifts that integrate the digital services. Now, what's going to happen now when we get head-worn 3D capable interfaces like the glasses I'm having on right now. Now, you may have seen a little light going off indicating that I took a photo. Now, these glasses are not AR capable yet, but very soon will be. This is a pair of Ray-Bans. Their looks are exotic. I'm making them in partnership with us. And this is what we think will be this next big tech shift that's going to integrate digital services even further into our lives. And either to start with, complement the mobile phone as your main gateway to digital services, and going further, potentially combination maybe with a wristband or something like that, potentially even replace a smartphone as the main interface. And that's really yeah, I can see the questions being written here as well. I'm also seeing that I'm talking way too slow to be able to get through all my slides, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit on that. Anyway, I rather wanted to sort of touch on this tech trend around metaverse and immersive tech as something really important. But what happened with these glasses also, when the Gen AI explosion we had here over the last couple of years, is that it became an AI device. I have a built-in language model that I can access through voice for these now. Again, they're still not AR capable yet, so I can't get the output visually in front of me at this time. However, I can get it back as audio, so I can have a conversation with my AI agent through my glasses. So, which is also incredibly, once you start using that, you see a massive raise in usability and ease to access compared to picking up a smartphone. Leaving XR, leaving metaverse a little bit, even though the trend in generative AI is extremely important, even to realizing these new services through other interfaces. We wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have these enormous breakthroughs that we've seen on AI now recently. So generative AI, it's obviously we're going to get into that for us, but we've had in the past, we've still used a lot of machine learning and pattern recognitions in our services. There's not that many parts that aren't touched in some way or another on Facebook and Instagram, even on WhatsApp, by some AI. One huge part is obviously content moderation through our platforms. That's where we're today. About automated technology can detect content violations with a really high accuracy and do that more efficiently than humans can. While we do the content moderation is done through a combination of humans and machines, but increasingly we can rely on automation to do that. But there are a whole range of things when it comes to accessibility and delivering content to the right people at the right time and things like that. So it has been with us for a long time. But if we then move over a little bit to generative AI, I'll touch on a couple of points on this one. There's a slightly almost outdated when it comes to talking about multimodal, because we start to see how so many that becomes standard for models, that they're not just able to take in and produce through text or produce text, but obviously you can use various types of input and get various formats of outputs already today in so many different models. And obviously, as I mentioned, I'm talking to my glasses when I don't have text input for those, and obviously we've all seen how models can generate both image and moving images and audio. So it's an exciting development, of course, but it's one important cornerstone in my view of where we see this going forward. Now, we obviously OpenAI and the ChatGPT was really something that advanced, or when they launched that, how amazed about what we could do with advanced things. Now, I think that we'll see generative AI being integrated by companies into existing surfaces rather than maybe be fully standalone. I think there's going to be both for sure. We'll see new types of agents that will be more in standalone in nature. We've got our Meta AI, which unfortunately isn't available in the EU yet due to unclarities around regulation and uncertainty that we're struggling with. Hopefully, we'll come to a point where we'll be able to launch our Meta AI services. But in other surfaces, for us, obviously, we're an advertising-funded business model. Our revenues comes from businesses that can advertise. Now, one thing that made us successful, probably a range of those things, but one thing was that we were able to deliver more efficient ads, and thereby you could get prices down to a level where more companies actually could afford to advertise. So now, one example of where generative AI is going to make a huge difference, obviously integrated into the advertising tools for businesses, where there's still a little bit of, if you want to be able to produce a good ad on our platform, there's still a bit of a craft to be able to do that. And here we really think that that's another example of where we will certainly see AI being integrated in our surfaces, and obviously that goes for others as well. We've all seen how Microsoft's Copilot comes into the different types of interfaces they already have towards people today. But then again, obviously we're not going to be able to predict all the new things that generative AI is going to be part of for us going forward. One more thing, which I think where we were early on implemented as part is through our messaging services, and how it can be part as we have a lot of surfaces for conversational where where you do conversations, and that's obvious place where it's very convenient to be able to just call in an AI agent or bring in an AI agent into a conversation you were having with friends instead of going out of that conversation and go to some other service to find some information you needed for the conversation. You can immediately just have it straight into it. We're running low on time, so I am gonna jump over to two more aspects I want. Responsible development is something that's been on the agenda. Obviously, throughout this Gen AI, we've gone from first a lot of concerns about the potential harms AI could do to society, and some even calling for AI to stop being developed until we figure that out. We have published our responsible development guidelines. Like so many other of our peers, there are good collaboration in industry to figure out some of the tougher challenges when it comes to making sure that we're like in the question how we make sure that intellectual property is protected, and I was in when I was at the EU Commission, or sorry, when I was in Brussels also for Meta for a while. I worked on when they started to develop what's now called the AI Act, the new regulation for AI. There's lots of concern about fairness and bias and discrimination, something that's been super important from early stages to make sure that you got equal outcomes of things. Privacy is also something that comes back as a very important part, given that it's quite vast amounts of data used to train models. But I wanted to make sure that I got to the last bit as well, where we are maybe slightly different from some of the other big model developers, has taken an approach where we're releasing our models as open source. Now, that wasn't at all an easy decision. There was someone commenting or questioning on the commitment to open. We were also at the time back then when there were lots of concerns whether how societal harms we could potentially see on abuse of AI. So it wasn't an easy decision to make. However, we do believe it is the right one, and we have an enormous uptake of our Llama models. Primarily, we've released a range of different things, but these models are extremely expensive and difficult to train and release. And I am happy that, well, by releasing them openly, first of all, we think that's a good way in terms of actually building a secure and robust model by getting input and feedback from all the developers throughout the world building on these models, but also making sure that everyone's got can have access and actually be part of coming up with new ways on how we can put AI to work for the sake of society and humanity. I promised you, Maria, that I would aim for 30 minutes talking, and I am at 30 minutes. So I will pause there. At least I can keep on talking on a couple of things. I skipped through open and responsible pretty quickly just to make it, but I'll also, in case you have any questions, really happy to take them. And
yes, I did get some questions, and I had one in advance as well. So I will go through them from top to bottom. And if our audience have any questions, you can write it in chat right now, so we can so we will be able to read them for Janne before we end. So the first one is, how does Meta balance its commitment to being an open company with the need to protect intellectual property and ensure data security?
Yeah, I tried to touch briefly on that one because I saw it on the chat. I can stop, by the way, stop sharing maybe the, there I am. I briefly try to touch, and I assume the question is how intellectual property, there are a few different angles on intellectual property when it comes to AI. First of all, I think the biggest one, and I assume what's being touched on here, is how do we ensure to respect intellectual property by training models on big amounts of data. We train there are fair use exceptions in the US for so you are able to train models on some intellectual property material. But then there's another discussion on intellectual property also when it comes to output of the AI, and who should own intellectual property. I assume it's the former one, given that it's in relation to open. Now, we have also we're not training our models in the EU, unfortunately, I would say, because there's a risk that you end up getting models trained which aren't representative for European languages, values, inputs, when we're unable at the moment. But there's a copyright regulation in the EU which has a text and data mining exception, which allows you to train models. And also I think it's important, there's so large amounts of data. So and what you should do, if you can opt out of being used for commercial purposes if you own copyright, and we really encourage people to do that in that case through the existing mechanism that exists online for it, because one single piece of content is obviously not crucial at all for training a model, given that it needs a lot, and the input from one single piece of content on the output is going to be very, very, very small.
Thank you. I can read the one who came in with registration. Let's see. For which use cases and sectors do you expect XR to have the immediate impact?
Yes, I mean, we're a consumer-oriented company first and foremost. So we obviously think a lot about like applications where when it comes to our mission of bringing people closer together. I have been interested in following, in Sweden at least, and seeing how many of our big industrial companies are actually starting to invest in XR, and many of those use cases, they differ, but many of them are related to learning or training staff. So the educational bit is an area where different types of learning, not necessarily school level, but at least maybe adults learning and training and businesses. And then you have a few use cases in industries as well, where it's just they're like you work on heavy machinery and you want to train people on that, and you be able to sort of heavy environments where you can't be. And so there a lot I've seen in relation to sort of industries. Another is car manufacturers have moved over to do their designs a lot because it's so expensive to build prototype designs, and now you can really do it quicker and cheaper, and really get a sense for what something will look like and be like in a design of if it's your new dashboard or whatever that might be on a car. So I think a few there for sure. We also have some very interesting in relation to healthcare, but I've always seen. So I mentioned I think these glasses eventually could compete with a mobile phone as the primary gateway to when they become AR capable. The headsets, the VR headsets that we currently have and we produce and sell, I I think there's going to be new use cases, but you could potentially see them as becoming a competitor to the laptop. But there's a bunch of different situations, but there's still some challenges to solve over there when it comes to input. And if that would happen, you could potentially imagine any kind of office work as well on VR.
Great. I will move on to the latest ones.
Just quickly on adoption. The biggest barriers. We're just on one of the big barriers. We're still, the reason these aren't AR capable is because we haven't yet sort of been able to physically build that, because the challenge of keeping these looking like a proper pair of glasses and then get batteries and all that into these small frames is still tremendously difficult. We presented a pilot glasses called Orion in our latest developer conference. Those have that, but they're tremendously expensive and they're still a bit bulky, but we are on path to soon becoming having that. So they're technical tough challenges. I think I mentioned the light going off when you take a camera. I think there are challenges to integrity that people initially will think it's you have camera on your head. Now, I think that's also something we'll overcome. The LED actually indicates clearly that now the camera is on, so surrounds people around you can see that. Like then if you're on a metro sitting down, you're going to have a bunch of phones aimed at you and you have no idea whether they're filming or taking pictures. But we got used to that, so I think we'll get used to the feeling of people walking around with cameras.
Okay. Do you want to choose for yourself the last questions? Or do you want me to read them?
Oh yeah, no, we can. We can go on. I think on devices. I mean, all our devices more or less already use a lot of AI. Whether it's glasses, headsets, phones, computers. I mean, they're all there. When it comes to XR, so when I say XR, I mean that's a collection, extended reality of VR and AR primarily, and all of these are getting to a point where it's blending a little bit as well. And obviously, I don't think phones are going to be the thing that we somehow be the interface, because I do think that this eventually three-dimensional thing is going to be what's important. So I do think on the devices question, I do think for me the most interesting development are glasses and head-worn for when it comes to XR.
Yes, and how open source community could take part in development of AR?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's the open source community. Obviously, there's a lot of AI used to be able to design and deliver services on through AR as well. So engaging on Llama development is obviously where will Llama be an open source, or that's obviously one thing. I'm a bit less and obviously you can today already start develop for the headsets. There's a distribution mechanism through app stores and stuff that way as well. But Llama is for us obviously currently one of the real flagship open source projects we have.
Yes. I will read this last question then. Can countries like Korea or China use your models and train them with their own data, bypassing moral limitations to gain an advantage over more developed nations?
Yeah, look, I mean, they are not released there, but obviously I saw recent reporting on sort of Chinese rumors, I think it was, of some Chinese project, bypassing that and ignoring. We have changed our approach on how we allow. We have a fair use policy that we expect people to respect, and when we're aware of not, we try to do what we can to block that access to it. But of course, this is I mentioned that open sourcing wasn't something we took lightly, and this was one of the discussions. What kind of abuse could we see as a risk? Of course, now when it comes to other countries, I think they also develop their own capabilities quite well already. So I'm not sure they're going to win that much from taking our stuff. But yeah, it is a challenging question. That we've worked a lot on trying to figure out as well.
Yes, thank you. And if there aren't any other questions, I would like to thank you, Janne, for this webinar, and we will be able to post it recording in a few hours for those who didn't manage to see the whole presentation. So thank you again, and hope you all got your questions answered.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you, Mike, having me over, and thanks to everyone who listened in and asked questions. Really interesting.